feeling that you get when you're on the water, just standing in the water, not even necessarily have a fish on your line, just the water's rushing past your legs, you know, the sun's shining and the birds are singing, and you can, you know, just the smell of spring or summer in the air, and just taking that deep breath and just like, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else than where I am right now, standing in this river. I just feel like I'm really connected. Like, even though I leave my phone in the car and I leave all that stuff behind, even though I lose connection with what people classify as the real world, I feel like leaving that stuff behind and just going out into the woods and standing in a river and enjoying my surroundings, I feel more connected doing that than I do sitting at my desk at work. I started tying flies one winter because I was bored and wasn't into the snowshoeing and wasn't into skidooing, snowmobiling like a lot of people here in the Maritimes are for the winter months. So a friend of mine said, you should start tying flies, and so I started with that a little bit. And it was weird for me as somebody who doesn't fish or hadn't fished since I was a little kid to start tying flies, because usually you have to have some sort of interest in fly fishing in order to have the notion, I'm going to tie some flies. So anyway, he convinced me to tie some flies, and it kind of just snowballed from there. I got a fishing rod for Christmas, a fly rod and a reel. And while everyone else was ice fishing, I would be on the lake casting my fly rod, looking like a fool. But I wanted to make sure that come springtime, I was ready to fish. So I cast it on a frozen lake all winter in preparation for the spring. And once April 1st rolled around, I was like, get me to the water because I gotta catch my fish. And so it was a hard, probably 3, almost 4 weeks of steady fishing every day after work, every day on the weekend, and putting in major time on the weekends and not catching anything. And I'm thinking, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? I don't know what I'm doing. I have no skill, and the fish hate me. That's got to be it, and I'm never going to catch a fish. But then one day, just like every other day for the past 3 or 4 weeks, I was out fishing, and I'm like, it's going to be like every other day so far, and I'm not going to catch a fish. But I felt this weight, and I thought I had hooked into a log, because I had done that enough times over the last couple weeks. I was sure it was a log. So I kind of gave it a little tug to kind of see if it would come free from the log. And I felt this shake and this massive weight. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And I was about to holler to my friend to say, I'm stuck, my fly's stuck, help me. But then I could feel my rod, and I could see my rod tip starting to bend, and I was like, I have a fish on right now, and I don't think it's a small trout. Like, this is a big fish. Whatever this is big. So my friend's shouting at me like, you've got a fish on, you got a big fish on. So I start fighting this fish, and I just had no idea what was on the other end of my line. Like I said, it was my first fish ever on the fly. And when I finally got it reeled in far enough, and my friend says, I think that's a salmon. And I remember just feeling like all the blood wash from my face, and I felt like my arms felt like spaghetti, and my knees, I could feel my kneecaps shaking, and it was the most unreal feeling ever. Like, once I finally landed that fish and had that fish its tail in my hands, and my hand's small as it is, but to not be able to physically wrap my hand around the tail of this fish and to literally try to lift this fish and feel the weight of this fish, it was far surpassed any expectation I ever had of fly fishing in my first fish on the fly. So I think ideally, if anybody getting into fly fishing could catch an 18-pound fish as their first fish, everyone that tried fly fishing would be doomed. But that was definitely a surefire way of getting me hooked on the sport. So I was done for after that. After I landed that fish and let it go, I had to sit on the bank and kind of collect my thoughts and try to process what had just happened. And I was like, I gotta go home. I gotta chill out. So I went home, had supper, and then I was sitting around. I was like, I think I gotta go back. So I went fishing again that same evening and caught another salmon that was between 8 and 10 pounds. So I knew that the fact that I catch a fish, go home and eat supper, and then I want to go back, I knew that this was going to be something that is going to slowly but surely take over my life. And I thought it was going to be a slow process, that I'd want to be fishing on the weekends and this and that, but it took over my life way quicker than I ever thought it would. It soon turned into, oh, I've got an hour of daylight after work, I'm going fishing. Or there's a family barbecue this weekend, can't make it, I'm going fishing. And and I don't want to make it seem like I love fishing because my first fish was this huge fish, because I get the same joy out of trout this big. And it's just getting outside. It's my love of getting outside, and I thought, being from Nova Scotia, I've lived here my whole life. Oh, I know Nova Scotia. I've seen Nova Scotia. I know what Nova Scotia is about. But since adding fly fishing to the mix, I'm realizing that there's so much of this province that I haven't seen, and fly fishing is really opening a lot of those doors to show, there's a lot to discover in Nova Scotia. There's a lot of, not just as far as fishing goes, but there's so much to see. The scenery's beautiful. The people are great. Nova Scotia is, I think, a hidden gem that a lot of people don't realize everything that Nova Scotia has to offer. And I'm just talking about the fishing side of things. Like, there's, just as far as fishing goes, a lot of people know Nova Scotia for the salmon fishing and that sort of thing, and that's all well and good, but a lot of people don't know we have a really great trout fishery, and that's what I personally like. I like salmon fishing, and salmon fishing's fun, but trout fishing is really my favorite, because you get to go to those little secluded streams that nobody sees. You get to hike an hour and a half into the woods and know that you're going to be the only one there, except for a couple squirrels and some birds and the fish. And it's just a great escape to get away from the everyday life, and just this province. I'm in love with this province. I've lived away. I've lived in Calgary. I've lived in Edmonton. And I just never got the feeling that it was somewhere that I wanted to be or wanted to stay. I always kept getting drawn back to Nova Scotia. I've left and come back and left and come back. And I just feel like now that I'm back, I can't imagine living anywhere else. I've lived other places, and like I said, keep getting drawn back to Nova Scotia. It's just such an amazing spot. And for people who do move away, I talk to people that live in Alberta that are from here, and they're always saying, oh, I just gotta work out here for 5 or 10 years, and then I'll be able to move home and relax and whatever. But I don't know, it just seems like such a big sacrifice to leave everyone you love and the place that you love, the land that you love, just in hopes that someday you might be able to come back. And I just don't see any real reason to leave. Everything I could ever want is here in Nova Scotia. We don't realize the opportunity that Nova Scotia has for young people. I think we got lost in the oil boom and that sort of thing. So, but Nova Scotia used to be a pretty happening place, and I really think that with some hard work, it can be that place again, and we need young people to stay here in order for that to happen.